Hello and welcome. My name is Ellen with Ellen Estelle, and today I'm going to be showing you how to sew Mccalls M8021, a Mrs. Wrap dress with belt. This is a loose-fitting line dress. It comes with two lengths, has a wrap front with snap closure and side seam pockets. You will need 2 pairs of snaps and 3/4 yards of a 1/4 inch elastic. The suggested fabrics are sequin, novelty, crepe, and velvet. You will also need a lining fabric. In this tutorial, I show you how to sew View B, the shorter length with sleeves. Since I'm using a heavier fabric, I chose not to line the sleeves, so I will also show you how to fully enclose the lining so no seams are showing on the inside. This dress features a belt, side seam pockets, elastic at the sleeve, and a wrap front with 2 snaps. You want to make sure that you look at the finished garment measurements on the back of the pattern envelope to select your size. Since the dress is loose fitting, I decided to size down and cut out a size medium. The fabric was purchased from Mila Fabrics in Jamaica, Queens, and the lining is a spandex from Fabric World in the Garment District. In the beginning, I show you how to redraft the center front. I chose to straighten out the waistline and the hemline so that it doesn't have the curve as the original pattern. I thought this created a cleaner and more simple look. Keep watching to learn how to sew Mccalls M8021. First, I start by transferring the bodice front pattern piece to my tracing paper. Next, you want to double check the high point shoulder. Place the tape measure at the shoulder point closest to your neck and measure straight down to the hem. You want to make sure that the dress will be long enough by doing the same measurement on your body and seeing how long you want it to be. Any adjustments to the length should be done now to the front and back pieces. It is important to remember to transfer all your markings and notches. As you can see, I have squared off the center front by using my ruler to draw intersecting straight lines from the center front and hem lines. I am marking an X along the original lines so that I do not mistakenly cut along this old line. Now I cut out the new pattern piece with my revisions. Next, I move on to cutting out my pattern pieces on my velvet fabric. You want to make sure that the pattern pieces are placed as close together as possible as not to waste any fabric unnecessarily. This is just like fitting puzzle pieces together. For the lining fabric, you only need to cut out the bodice front, bodice back, and pocket lining. Be sure to cut out 4 pieces of the pocket lining. To begin sewing, start by attaching your pocket lining to your bodice front and back pieces. Line up the pockets with the notches along the side seams, right sides together, and sew into place at 5/8 inch seam allowance. Now is a good time to finish the raw edges of the side seams by using a serger/overlocker or pinking shears. Now that the pockets have been attached, flip the pocket away from the garment and top stitch the pocket piece at 3/8 inch seam allowance. This is your understitching to keep the pocket from showing on the outside. Once you have understitched all 4 pockets, match the front and back bodice pieces with right sides together. Pin all along the side seams and pockets as well as the shoulders. You will be stitching the sides together. Once you reach the pockets, you will follow the curve of the pocket and then finish the continuous stitching line all the way to the hem. Now is the time to finish the raw edges of the pocket with your serger or pinking shears. Now we move on to the sleeves. Match the sides of the sleeves with right sides together. Stitch at 5/8 inch seam allowance and finish the raw edges. To ease the fullness of the sleeve into the armhole when sewing, it is helpful to do a basting stitch, or the longest stitch length possible on your machine, around the curve of the sleeve. Pull on the bottom thread to create a rounded cap. To attach the sleeve to the bodice, pin the sleeve into the armhole with right sides together, making sure to match up the notches. The side with one notch should be attached to the front bodice piece, the side with two notches, the back. Check that the notches are matching on the sleeve and bodice pieces. Pin into place and sew at 5/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure to spread out the gathers so that there is no puckering showing on the outside. Do not finish the armhole edges just yet. Now we move on to the lining. First, pin the side seams and shoulders together of the front and back bodice pieces, right sides together. Sew into place at 5/8 inch seam allowance and finish the raw edges. Now is a good time to attach your label to your lining. I like to use Scotch tape to hold my label in place before I sew it down. With right sides together, pin your lining to your outer fabric. Start at the hem of your center front and pin all along the outer edge of your neckline to the other side. Stitch in one continuous line all the way around at 5/8 inch seam allowance and finish the raw edges. With the outer edges sewn together, flip the garment right side out. To keep the lining from showing on the outside, you will need to understitch the lining fabric at 3/8 inch seam allowance all the way around this outer edge. In other words, you will only stitch the lining to the seam allowance. The stitching should not show on the right side of the garment. Now to fully enclose the lining on the inside, you will need to pin the lining and the sleeve opening with the wrong side of your fabric attached to the right side of your lining. Stitch along the armhole at 5/8 inch seam allowance and finish the raw edges. Your garment should now look like this. The seams are enclosed at the armhole. To finish the lining, flip the garment inside out and pin the hem of the lining and self fabric with the right sides together. Stitch along this line, but leave an opening about 3 inches big in the middle of the hem line. Finish the raw edges. Be sure not to close the opening. Then, through the 3-inch opening, you will pull the garment through, back to right side out. To close the opening, hand stitch the hem closed. To finish, we need to add the elastic to the sleeves. Flip the hem under 2/8-inch seam allowance and baste with the longest stitch possible. Then, flip this edge under 3/8 inch and stitch down, leaving about a 1-inch opening. Using a safety pin, I attach the pin to one edge of the elastic and slide it through the opening. Stitch the two edges of the elastic together using a zigzag stitch or a strong straight stitch. Close the opening of the sleeve by stretching out the elastic and finishing the 3/8 inch stitching line. To create the sash, sew the sashes with right sides together at one of the shorter ends. Finish the edge. Then, open the sash and fold in half. Sew all along the edges. Be sure to leave about a 2-inch opening. Finish the edges and clip all the corners at an angle. Pull the sash through the opening and press all the edges flat and square. Be sure to close the opening by hand stitching it closed. To add the finishing touches, you will need to add the snaps to keep the dress closed. The snaps should be placed at both the right and left side of the center front. Try on the garment and mark how far over your snaps should be. Hand sew into place. Now you're done! Mccalls M8021 is such a fun and easy make. Thank you for watching Ellen Estelle. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Until next time.